that will give us the turn. I've heard the former finance minister, Amin Anta, our brother here, spoke, extensively even in Parliament in order for to talk about, to the effect that you've not done anything novel. You've just inherited strategies that are already laid down for your operations, and that's what is currently putting the economy where it is today.
Well, I respect Honorable Amin Anta a lot. He's my colleague in Parliament. We knew each other whilst we were in Tamale Secondary School. He was 1 year ahead of me. So it was a privilege to see him occupy that office. But I beg to differ. It is very clear that people whose policy was to print money cannot turn around and say that people who have decided not to print money is inheriting a good policy. To the extent that the IMF insisted as part of the program that the Bank of Ghana and Honorable Amin Anta's office, the Ministry of Finance, ought to sign a memorandum of understanding debarring the Bank of Ghana from printing money for the government. That was how serious it was. So they printed and pumped into this economy 80 billion Ghana cedis. And that 80 billion Ghana cedis is what deteriorated the economy. Everybody knows that if you print like a Yahoo boy, you need to work to make money. But if all that you do is to print money, then you are no different from a Yahoo person, right? And that is how they run the economy. Do they want to see that that is a policy that we're proud of, that we will inherit? As a matter of fact, what we have done, one of the biggest jobs we have done as part of monetary policy anchor, was to recall that 80 billion cash that was roaming in the economy, that didn't belong in the economy, back to the central bank. As a result of that, we were able to then see the economy for what it is. And as a result, we have been able to stabilize all the macroeconomic fundamentals. As a matter of fact, what we have achieved has never happened in the Fourth Republic. Today, you speak of inflation at 3.3%. These are guys who took inflation to 54%.
They say it's artificial.
What is artificial about inflation?
It is not, stable. It can't last the moment because...
Well, I keep telling you, I cannot be following people who are wishing for the downfall of this country. Why would you expect that your economy should deteriorate so that you can make political power? The important thing is that we have gotten to this by dint of hard work. They struggled to even bring inflation to 20%. Ended up with 23%. We have brought it to 3.3%. As a matter of fact, the biggest challenge we're having to deal with now is that if we don't steady the ship, we may actually go into disinflation. And that is not what we want, because then that becomes an incentive to businessmen.
Yeah.
So we are very careful to make sure that we don't get to the point where there's a disincentive for businessmen. So there's a vast difference. 3.3% was a dream that any governor since the 1992 Constitution would have only dreamt about. But today is a reality. If you look at the fact that you now have inflation at 3.3%, it means that real interest rates must have a little margin above 3.3%. So you can be moving towards a single-digit interest rate, because you don't need to pay a lot of compensation when you borrow money.
And is that a possibility under?
It is something we are working very hard at. Go and check the Ghana reference rate, and I want to give you some background as to how we calculate the Ghana reference rate. The Ghana reference rate is a weighted average comprising 40% of policy rate. So if you are dealing with a very high policy rate, it means that you are adding 40% of that high rate in determining your Ghana reference rate. It is also 40% of your treasury bill rate. So if you were doing treasury bill rate at 33% like they were doing, you are adding a bigger chunk to interest rate. Okay? And then it is 20% of the same treasury bill rate. So if you put this together, you will get what we call the Ghana reference rate. So now you are dealing with a policy rate of 14%. Obviously, 40% of 40% gives you a smaller interest rate. You are dealing with a treasury rate of around 11%. If you take 40% of that, it gives you a smaller rate. And then you are taking another 20% of that. So you see that the variables that determine the Ghana reference rate are all within manageable limits. And as a result, Ghana reference rate must come down. And the Ghana reference rate behaves like what you used to call the base rate. It is a starting point from which the bank must now price for your risk. So if that base, which is dictated by the economy, is smaller, then you have the chance of borrowing at a lower rate. And we did that consciously to be able to provide relief to businessmen and bring down interest rate. This is a clear policy deviation from the MPP that took policy rate to over 25%. That took treasury rates to close to 40%. Clearly, you cannot be comparing apples with mangoes. These are a clearly focused group of people who are managing the deliverables that affect this policy. And we are not just moving the numbers, we are making sure that they reflect the fundamentals of the economy.
So if we can say the CD experienced significant depreciation, about 19% in 2024.
Yes.
Before the current